did you go to school?
And here's your
What do you think of what's going on right now, mate?
These evil little invisible parasites.
Satan-worshipping Freemason moron.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
We're not run by factions.
Get the fuck out of camera!
There are much more powerful international forces in play.
Is this pink guy? Is this what pink guy is? I don't fucking know what's happening.
Please go outside and look at the moon quickly.
It's been crazy, guys, but guess what? It's how it is, mate.
Mate, because I want to do you slowly.
But I ain't spending any time on it.
Welcome to the Conditional Release Program, a podcast that delves into the netherworld of cults, crims, and con artists. I'm Jack the Insider, otherwise known as Peter Hoistead for tax purposes.
And I'm Joel Hill, and today we have our Federal Election 2025 post special. It's good.
Was there an election? No.
Was there?
There was indeed.
Was
and
there?
if you listen carefully, folks, you could hear Joel quietly sobbing because he wasn't allowed to take a bet on a Labor majority, which was paying $15 10 weeks ago. On election day, it came into $1.40. But we weren't going to allow it to happen. Not after all the money he blew back in Kamala last year.
Yep, I've actually been banned from betting, and I would have put so much money, mostly on Labor to win at $2.60, because that was such a safe bet. It was $2.60. That's no. Anyway, I should have been allowed to bet because now I'd be counting my money, and instead I'm just counting my grievances, which are huge, long, and include you, cunt.
Well, I'm afraid we couldn't let you get away with it. Otherwise, we would have had another intervention, at this time with baseball bats and knives.
Well, it's actually quite lucky I didn't gamble, because if I bet on this election, Dutton would be the Prime Minister. But that has not happened. Albo is our new god. All kneel before him. That's not blasphemy because the Pope's dead. And not only did he win, but he sent the Libs into an existential crisis from where they may never actually return. I mean, they're fucked.
Yes, we must bow before Albo. He is the first Prime Minister to be re-elected since John Howard in 2004, so that's 21 years.
Mm-hmm.
This is the largest Labor victory on a two-party preferred basis, while votes are still being counted, since John Curtin's election in 1943. But the best stat, the one I like most of all, is that the Albanese government, or the government that Albo led, is the only first-term government to have a swing towards it in Australian political history.
As Joe Biden would say, that's a big fucking deal.
It is indeed. So Howard went backwards in 98, Hawke in 1984. Hawke called the early election, and it nearly cost him his job.
Yeah.
Fraser went back by just a whisker in 1977. Of course, Gough went a little bit backwards in 1974 before the calamity of 1975.
So everyone, even Menzies had a swing against them when they were seeking a second term. But only Albo got a swing towards him, and not just a fraction of a percent.
It's big.
But with votes still being counted, of course, somewhere around 4% toward the incumbent government, which is unheard of in these times.
It'll be somewhere between 3 and 4% when all the votes are counted. We got to about 80% today, but we're going to discuss it all today, where it all went right for Albo and Labor and where it went wrong for the coalition, the Greens, and yes, even the Teals.
Mm-hmm. And Cookers on the far right did terribly.
Ooh,
so badly.
A lot of pain there.
The old FON, Pauline Hanson's One Nation, which we will refer to as FON for about 400 times in this episode, might have little teeny weeny back in Queensland.
He's back, little teeny weeny. You may not see him, but he is back.
He is there. He's got his little booster seat. He's there. Maybe Western Australia, but the rest of the right-wing freaks just didn't show up. See you later, Rennick.
Did not run a drum.
Yeah.
And just a quick reminder to all our listeners that this podcast don't come for free. Well, it does. You can listen to it for free.
Yeah.
But we are using our own time and labour to put it together, and we would love for you to come along and support us with our Patreon. You just have to go to www.patreon.com/the Conditional Release Program, and for as little as $5 a month, you can get access to all sorts of behind the paywall smarts.
It is sometimes
including naked photos of Joel and myself in compromising positions.
Unsolicited. They're just sent randomly on the Patreon emails. Speaking of unsolicited, this one is solicited. It is time to remind you that CBCo make the finest beer in the land. And by that, I mean their IPA is definitely one of the best beers in the country, but all the rest of their beers are pretty good too. They have a new hazy XPA, which I don't think is in the shops, but they sent me some, and it's fucking delicious. But their pale ale, which is decent and comparable to any other brew I can think of in the genre, the pale ale can get you entry into a competition where a man with a grey beard and what looks like maybe a jetpack or something will help you spend $100,000 over 4 days. So there's a competition. Go to CBCo.beer to check that out. And remember, CRP10 will get you 10% off. It doesn't give us any money, but when that comes up on their little computers, they go, I'm so glad we're sponsoring that dumb podcast, and they'll keep sending me beer. So do it.
And we're going to discuss all of that today, where it all went right for Albo and Labor and where it went wrong for the coalition. Oh, so wrong. The Greens went badly there. And yes, even the Teals. Yeah, so do all of that. So, listeners, let's get stuck into the entrails of the election that saw Albo become a Labor god.
We're not run by factions. We're not run by...
So, with 80% of the votes counted, it looks like a 55 to 45 two-party preferred result. May come back a little bit, I think, by the end, when everything is counted, 54-46. The primary votes, again, still being counted, but the Labor 34 to 35, with the Libs are very dismal. I think they might just nudge 32% of the primary vote. 2019 it was 41-42. 2022 it was, I think, 37. So, and even when we look at polling, back January, February, they were polling, they just nudged 40% in their primary vote. So they've lost at least 8% since that time.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly the polls, while I cite them, and that was a news poll that I was citing, were wrong. They underestimated Labor's primary vote. Overall, we'll have a sort of 4% swing towards Labor.
Which
Kevin
is a lot.
Bonham today published some polling figures and where they were, just so we can compare to how close they got. Freshwater had Labor ahead 51.5%, and they were also, or one of their polling companies within them, were the Liberal pollsters. And they were the ones telling the Libs, hey,
You got a
you're
chance,
really
mate.
close, man. You can touch it. You can feel it.
It'll be fine.
Newsbowl was
Stop whining.
52.5. They were at least 54.5. So they were a bit out too. Newsbowl's private polling company was the ones that Labor used. Essential were at 53, probably closer to 52 when we take into account two-party preferred. So they were a bit off. YouGov, the sort of new entrance into the polling market, or the new major one, they were 52.2 on their final poll, maybe 52.9, let's say 53, also out. So the polling companies were out. Certainly the polling companies chipping into the coalition were a mile away, and that led to this kind of sanguine sense that even on Saturday night when they gathered in Liberal Party HQ in Brisbane, there was a sort of sense of almost optimism about it, which was pretty damn funny when 2 hours later it all just went tits up. Some seats, I just want to point out just exactly where we are now in a lot of these sort of key seats. Some of the marginals that were thought to be in play. Gilmore on the south coast of New South Wales, it's a perennial marginal, and that was thought to be, in fact, the bookmakers, we can talk about the bookies getting it a fair bit wrong too, but the bookies had Andrew Constance as a very firm favourite to win that, the Liberal member or Liberal candidate. The Labor member, Fiona Phillips, won at 55-45 with a swing of around about 3 or 4% towards her. Very Smashing. Well done there.
Yeah.
Bennelong, which is Johnny Howard's old seat, although the boundaries have shifted a bit.
Yeah.
This one staggers me because this one was supposed to be in play. Labor's sitting member, Jeremy Laxale, beat Scott Young, who was a somewhat problematic candidate, 59-41.
Yeah.
So that's a 9% swing to unseat.
That's
to unseat
smashing.
Jeremy Laxale next time around.
Just a smashing.
And that was a 10% swing in Bennelong. In Parramatta, which has also been a marginal for a long, long time. It was 53.47 in 2022. Now it's 62.38. Andrew Charlton, the senior advisor for Kevin Rudd, is the sitting member there, and he had barely had to go to preferences. It was astonishing.
Yeah.
Probably the most astonishing one of the night, again, bookies nowhere near this, was Aston. Now, our listeners might remember that Aston was won by Labor in what was an historic by-election, with a sitting government actually winning a by-election from the Liberals. Aston is in Victoria and the sort of Eastern Mortgage Belt. And no one gave him any chance. Not even Labor gave him any chance. Well, there was a 4% swing to the Labor candidate. Well done her, by the way. And they've won at 53.47. It's still a marginal, but it's in the outer realms of being a marginal now. Just another one I picked at random, Boothby, where Nicole Flint had been the sitting member until 2022. She got turfed out. Had another crack. It was 53.47 when she lost in 2022 to Louise Miller-Frost, the Labor candidate. And there was a swing of 8% to the sitting member, Louise Miller-Frost, the Labor member. And she holds the seat. She holds her seat 61-39.
Yeah, that's big.
That's a belting and a half. Tangney in WA, out of Perth, big migrant population, particularly from India, Asia. It is, Joel, and you'll take note of this, I hope, it is one of the great Bhutanese diasporas, Joel.
Oh, yeah.
Australia has the second largest population of Bhutanese people outside of Bhutan.
There you go.
And many of them live in Tangney. And we know this because the King of Bhutan routinely visits Perth to catch up with some of the expats.
Yeah.
In Tangney, again, this was a seat that the Liberals gave themselves some chance. There was a swing of 3% to the sitting member, Sam Lim, who's an ex-cop and dolphin trainer.
That is a strange mix.
It is a strange mix. God love him for being truly weird in his career background. Swing of 3% towards him. Now it's 56.44. It's barely a marginal seat now. Leichhardt up in FNQ, traditional redneck country, with Warren Ench, the long-standing member for Leichhardt, Liberal LNP member, retiring. Labor won that seat 57-43. There was a 10% swing. And we welcome to the Parliament Labor's Matt Smith. And also, Joel, because he was one of the friends of the podcasts, a man that was helping out this fellow, the member for Hunter, Dan Repacholi. He was re-elected with 44% of the primary vote and a 5% swing towards him on primary vote.
Yep.
And has held the seat comfortably. I haven't seen a preference breakdown there, but he was under attack from the Nats up in Hunter and also One Nation.
And Morgan C. Jonas is also explained later.
Yeah, well, look, one of the things I noticed, X is such a fucking cesspit at the moment.
Ugh.
That there was an ad run by this mob called One Australia, which is obviously closely linked to Pauline Hanson's One Nation.
Yeah, okay.
And they put an ad up during as voting closed on the Saturday night, saying that what's the name of the One Nation candidate? I can't remember his name off the top of my head.
What in New South Wales?
That he had picked up. Yeah.
Stuart Bonds in
Stuart
Hunter.
Bond. Thank you, mate. Yeah, thank you. That he was rocking a good 26% of the vote.
Oh, I saw that. That was embarrassing.
Yeah, I posted it.
And he was going to kill it.
I reposted it on X.
Was that a sponsored post or was that just a tweet?
It was an ad. Well, all that X said was an ad.
Wow.
So, and in fact, the numbers in the ad made no sense because it had Dan Repacholi at 38%, and then the One Nation kiddie Stuart Bond at about 36%. He was running second. That meant he would win on preferences. Didn't happen.
No,
And
absolutely
God
not.
bless Dan Rapaccioli, who's he's a former coal miner. He's about 300 feet tall.
He
He's
is.
an enormous human being. And he's been a very, very good member for Hunter since 2022 when he was elected there, and he will get 3 more years. Well done, that man.
Yeah, no, he's pretty good. He also likes to give cookers a bit of shit and does that on social media sometimes, which is very, very funny. He's a man of many burgers and likes to shoot the range and are generally just sort of nice. Seems like a nice guy. I like him.
Well, what I like most about Dan and one or two of these others, including our good mate Sam Lim, dolphin trainer, is that they're not lawyers. Now, I know,
Yes, we've got enough of
you're
those.
starting to become a law talking guy and all that sort of stuff, but we have so many lawyers in the parliament. Too many, I think. What we need to have is a few people with sort of backgrounds that are somewhat different, somewhat diverse from just being a lawyer, going through student politics. In a Labor way, you end up getting a gig with a union or as a
Yep.
staffer.
Oh, I know
Liberals
that
the same way.
all too well. Like, I mean, I've went to, sort of adult school with lots of them when I went through UCID. And when I was doing rendering work on the outside of Parliament House, I was on the scaffold there with my hard hat looking down and seeing some massive cunts I went to school with who should not be anywhere near the corridors of power. But do the arts degree, do the law degree, go work for a union.
I just think it's really good. And Labor have, look, Labor, both major parties are in the habit of doing this. People have served their time as staffers, served their time in student politics, served their time perhaps in a trade union.
It's how it works.
But Labor have diversified the backgrounds of their politicians quite a lot. And so we are seeing a more diverse group of people, also more women on the Labor side of things. We'll get to that because the Libs have just not learnt the lesson at all. And 51% of the voting public are women, and they expect to see a few women on the bloody ballot paper, Joel.
Yeah, for better or worse. Yeah, look, I would say that they made a bloody effort this time. A lot of the people, unfortunately, they weren't in exactly the safest seats, which means that the party room probably doesn't change too much. But if you look at, sadly, a lot of the seats that were lost by the Liberals, a lot of them are women. Now, that's not saying it's a good thing. In the fact they lost, a lot of these were pretty close contests, or they were meant to be close contests at least. But I do feel like a lot of the place, like, when a member retires and stuff like that, the thing I'm trying to say is I think they're trying harder, but I don't think they're trying hard enough. And I even heard today on the ABC that they're talking about implementing quotas, which is just going to drive a small part of their base, which we tend to like talking about, completely insane. They will
go
lose
crazy
their
on that because
fucking
it's
minds.
communism. Any sort of quota is communism.
It's just so embarrassing. It's like
it reminds me, Joel, of the rather famous quote from Margaret Thatcher. I believe it was a woman.
Yes.
And she said, if you want something said, ask a man. If you want something done, ask a woman.
Yeah, fair call. Yeah.
So
she was a
there we
DI
go.
candidate, so there you go.
Now we're gonna take a look at where it went wrong for the Tories, and the list is long.
It is long.
Believe me. But we just wanted to have a look at some of the minors too, because come Saturday night, it looked like the Teals were going to romp home the sitting members, and they call themselves independents, but they're all linked to the sort of Climate 200 group. So we're happy enough to call them Teals. We could call them Tree Tories if we were going to be totally dismissive.
Well, I call them that, but endearingly, because I think they're like Tree Tories is a nice term, to be honest.
Well, they pre the Teals. I mean, I guess that's where the colour stuff comes in, but they were the blue Greens. They were the supporters of the Greens in leafy suburbs of Melbourne and the North Shore of Sydney.
Yeah.
So, yes, that's probably where their background comes from. But as I say, on Saturday night, it all looked good for them with the inclusion of Bradfield, which is another Upper North Shore seat, previously held by retiring member was Paul Fletcher, former Telstra boss, Liberal MP in Bradfield. He retired. and it did look very, very shaky for them. I mean, counting is continuing, but Nicolette, the Teal candidate, Nicolette Boel, I think that's pronunciation is B-O-E-L-E.
Bowler, I think it is.
Bowler, okay. I'll
Bowler.
have that.
Oh, we're going to find out.
Sounds a bit South African, doesn't it? A little bit,
Sounds a
Yappy,
lot
I may
South
be wrong.
African.
But she is behind the Lib candidate, Giselle Kaptarian.
Oh, she's behind.
Yeah, she's behind by 56 votes. And
it's
56. Not looking
okay.
good.
Oh, that's statistical anomaly shit. I don't know about that.
Giselle Kaptarian, that's almost certainly an Armenian name.
Yes.
Anyway, Paul Fletcher was a retiring MHR. It was up for grabs. If we counted, as we did in 2022, the number of core flutes on people's yards in Bradfield, you would say Nicolette Burler was going to win, but it looks like Giselle Kaptarian will win. She's 56 votes ahead, as I say. I haven't got an exact...
178 now.
178, and Gates updated. Just checked that 10 minutes ago, so they've obviously just dumped some postals in there.
The live updates come every 6 minutes or something, apparently.
Tim Wilson has a 925 vote lead as we record this over Zoe Daniel in Goldstein, so he will win. Tim Wilson is back in the parliament, and I dare say he'll be going straight to the front bench. Did you know he's gay, Joel? He's gay.
Yeah, I have heard. But like, I won't be as facetious. I will say that gay moderate representation in the Liberal Party isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Not a bad thing.
I'd much prefer to see Zoe Daniel sitting there, obviously. But like, when it comes to people winning against candidates I'd like to see in Parliament, Tim Wilson's IPA, Institute of Public Affairs, not his delicious beer side, is what I don't really like. He's sort of like gay, wet, mediocre, progressive side.
The reason I said, did you know he's gay, is that
he brings it up all the time.
He refers to his sexuality like it's a motivating characteristic, or it is something that makes him a little bit better than everybody else.
Yes, which is unfortunate because no one actually thinks like that except for the right, that think that we somehow put trans and gay people on pedestals and that people are falling over themselves to take it in and just be gay so they can be loved by everyone. You know what? That's not how it works. It's just another guy, but he brings a bloke instead of a Sheila. Like, no one cares anymore. It's 2025. It's so normal.
Well, there was a comment made on the ABC coverage last night from the Treasurer, Dr. Jim Chalmers. I won't call him Doctor because he's just got a PhD, but Jim Chalmers, there was a reference made to Tim Wilson being a popular local member, and Jim Chalmers said, well, he's popular for all those people who haven't met him. Bit of a slapping there. Like, Chalmers is such a sort of moderate fellow. He didn't do too much insulting. Over in Kooyong,
he's holding his
down in Melbourne's leafy green suburbs, Kooyong went through a distribution. Actually, so did Goldstein. In fact, Goldstein became more, added just less than 1% to Zoe Daniels' vote, and it took away about 1.5 points from Monique Ryan. It basically chucked in great slabs of Toorak. There was the seat of Higgins, which is now gone, which is around Prahran, and that's been dissolved entirely. So a great big chunk of Toorak went into Monique Ryan's electorate of Kooyong and made it a little bit more difficult for her to win. As we go to air, she's 1,000 votes.
1,002.
1,002, in fact, that's right. She's 1,002 votes ahead. There, just looking at the total count there, Joel, I think there's about 97,000 votes counted.
I'm not saying 78.4%.
Yeah, so there's probably about 8,000 to be counted.
97,
and they'd all be postals. But 1,000 vote lead at that point probably means she's safe, but it will go down to the wire. And when people talk about postals and they say, well, why do the Liberals always come back and and sometimes there's a reference to the Liberal Party's organisation just being really, really good at postals. There's a little bit to that, not much. It really means most people, if you're elderly, particularly infirm or have mobility issues, you're going to vote postal.
Yeah,
If
they do
you
that aged care facilities and shit.
Travel domestically, internationally, you're likely to vote Liberal, particularly business executives, etc., etc., etc. It's going to tilt towards the Liberals, a bit. But with a 1,000 vote lead, and by my estimate, about 8,000 to be counted, and they'd pretty much all be postals.
Yeah, it'll need you a big
She probably got enough of a lead to be re-elected.
Yeah, I mean, like we discussed, Dave and I discussed this in the last episode, that this, of course, is the seat where Hamer, not only is she the trust fund who lied about being a renter, because she is a renter, she didn't lie about that, but she does rent. She does rent. Yeah, she does. She rents a 1-bedroom apartment. She had no idea how she could raise a child in it. Mate, pull the other one. She's the beneficiary of a $20 million trust fund?
$30 million trust fund, family trust fund.
Yeah, it's not bad. Look, anything past 10 million is really just cheddar. And then, of course,
got a little bolt hole in London. That'll be just anything in London's cheap.
Yeah, so she's not short of quid.
$2 million in value there, and that's for a shithole.
With that embarrassment that happened there, with her basically just bullshitting her way into trying to be relatable, she also had this situation where the local council down there said, one A-frame or Caulfield or whatever, because I don't want shit everywhere. This campaign's nuts.
All over the place. I saw some photos.
They put walls against the road, so you couldn't cross the road. You were unable to cross the road because of a stupid face. And then
that stuff's counterproductive, though, surely.
Oh, sure it was. Clearly not. She's fucking in the game. I thought she was going to get thrashed. She was such an embarrassment to politics as a concept. But then they went to the fucking Supreme Court and got a fucking, I don't even know what it would be, an injunction. They basically got a ruling saying that no, freedom of political communication, they are allowed to put shit everywhere as long as it's safe.
And they did.
The council, I believe, can find you otherwise.
It's just wallpapered all over the place.
Just
I don't think any
behavior.
of that stuff matters, by the way. I mean, I really don't think it matters.
Shits me. They can get fucked. I want them to suffer for that. They've suffered for a lot of things. They've suffered the culture wars. They've suffered for moving right. They need to suffer. No, fuck them.
No, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. I mean, I think where it does sort of matter, that may have mattered in 2022 with the rise of the Teals, that all of a sudden we were seeing signs that we'd never seen before. But as for actually wallpapering corflutes of the length and breadth of Kooyong,
have you seen the photos?
I mean, I have. The photos? I know, it's ridiculous and just
sidewalks,
utterly shameful. And I hope all the volunteers are getting around there and removing them.
Well, these are A-frames, so they'd be removed on the day, but because A-frames are obviously way too portable to just leave there. But from what I saw from those photos, people in motorised wheelchairs would not have been able to get past.
Stuck to fences, just 100 meters long.
That's not what I'm taking so much an issue with. I'm taking issue with obstructing pedestrian walkways and obstructing people from getting where they want to go. That shits me. Don't do that.
Look, I understand. I sympathise with you, but I don't think it matters much in terms of result. I don't.
Well, it clearly doesn't.
I certainly don't think it's a matter of who has the most corflutes wins the election.
But also, who's the biggest asshole doesn't seem to matter. It's just fucking party lines, and they've took in Toorak, which for people who aren't from Victoria or know of the area, it's a very affluent part of Melbourne. And bringing in Toorak means you're just going to have a bunch of more Liberal voters. Just the way
Kooyong, it's not quite as affluent as it
but Toorak
has been. Well, now you're going into Toorak, there's little bits of Toorak, there's bits of Malvern, there's bits of Hawthorn, there's bits of Kew. Now, Kew, Hawthorn, this is where a lot of first-time buyers are now, living in apartments in Kew, and there's a hell of a lot of sort of development there, apartment blocks, all that sort of stuff too. So the demographics of it have changed quite significantly. We do have to wonder if, the Teals lose Bradfield as they're expected to win. I've been talking about that for a long time. I'm quite surprised that that's happened. And of course, Zoe Daniel going down in Goldstein, Monique Ryan being taken right to the wire. The first thing you got to ask is what went wrong with the Teals, and the first thing you got to say is that the Libs have thrown a lot of money at Kooyong, and they're throwing a lot of money at Goldstein. They have not made the same investment of their time in terms of Sophie Scamps in McKellar, in terms of Allegra Spender in Wentworth. They've given those up.
Yeah.
But these they were prepared to fight for.
Yeah.
And so there's been a lot of money thrown at it. And then I think there's also a sense about the Teals that, they sit in the cross benches. I mean, if you're a punter in Kooyong, for example, or a punter in Goldstein, and that's kind of bits of St Kilda and Elwood going all the way out to Brighton, very leafy out there.
Yeah.
That sometimes it's nice to have someone who a local member who is a minister of the Crown, or is been the case in Kooyong many, many times, a prime minister.
Yeah, sure. But
and maybe that's it. I mean,
also opposition.
It's a surprise result, but they've definitely gone backwards.
Yeah, I don't think Hamer's the kind of person you want as a representative in any way, shape, or form, even if she's got power. I don't see her as being someone who gives a fuck about anything. Like her demeanor just appears very sort of vacuous. I'm not a fan at all.
Yeah, but why did the Teals go backwards? This is the question we're asking.
Well, yeah, and that is a very important question. But I would say that a lot of that is to do with the fact that some people are just rusted on, and those people live in fucking Toorak. I reckon the redistribution has a lot to do with this.
Yeah, but she still had a margin of 1.2%.
Yeah, it was close seat. But I mean, that's the thing. When you steal a seat from a blue ribbon Liberal area, like, you are going to have to fight for it. And people like Zali and stuff, the great thing about Zali's victory is that not only did she win against the sort of serious incumbent of Tony Abbott, that's a big battle, but then they ran absolute fruitcakes. I mean, who's I can't remember her name. She's not worth remembering, though.
No, I was having a bit of I wasn't having a crack at her on X. What's her name? She was helping herself to a bit of Catherine Devis.
Catherine Deves, yeah. Catherine Deves. Yeah, she's a horrid individual.
Well, they had to basically put her on ice in the 2022 campaign because she just went completely off the reservation.
Well, yeah, she's surrounded by sycophants.
No discipline, nothing. I honestly think the answer for the cutback in Teals is part of that thing in Kooyong. You want to have your local member be a decision maker.
Yeah.
But I also think there's a lot of money that's been spent in getting the Libs there. Certainly they've invested a few bob in corflutes.
Yeah, and I imagine Amelia Hamer doesn't really have much to do other than campaign, because I don't remember much talk about her
She's a banker.
Career. Oh, she's a banker.
She's a banker. She worked in Jane Hume's office as an advisor there for a while. We'll get to Jane Hume because she didn't have a good campaign.
No, she had a shocker, but she is a shocker
in the Senate.
She's a head kicker, but she's a head kicker that when she says something, you look at her and think, I want to vote for you less than who you're talking about.
It just didn't work. We'll get to that anyway. But before we get to the Teals, before we get to the Libs, the Blues, we've got to get to we've got to move from the Teals to the Greens.
The forest for the trees.
And it looks like they have lost all of their lower house seats.
Brutal.
Adam Band is definitely gone. He hasn't conceded yet, but he's, I think, two or three. Oh,
I don't think
it's
ABC's
close
got
enough,
him yet.
But he's just not going to win that. So again, Labor, well, no one foresaw Band getting rolled. I mean, I don't even think Labor had it on their bingo card. But he's gone. Of course, they lost to Labor in Brisbane, which Labor lost in 2022. Same with Griffith, which is just down the road from Brisbane. They'd lost that to the Greens in 2022. And now they've come back to Labor. So Labor have worked assiduously in getting those seats back. Max Chandler Mather was the Greens member for Brisbane, of course.
Yeah,
probably a little bit too outspoken for a first termer.
Too sassy, which is tricky.
We'll get to some of the more general issues around the Greens, but again, a little bit like Kooyong, Labor weren't just Labor could see if we put enough money, put a decent candidate before the people, we can win these back. The other one, it's difficult to see, but I just checked the figures on Ryan, which is South Brisbane seat, lost by the Liberals to the Greens in 2022. It's a three-way contest now, and the ASC aren't publishing preference flows, but Labor in second spot, and that tells me they'll probably win the seat there. So that all that adds up to the fact that the Greens will have no representation in the upper house. So the great triumphs of 2022 are all gone.
Which they were big, but at the same time, like, as you were saying with the Teals and that sort of stuff, like, when you are a single voice in the parliament like that, you're really not that inspiring. But at least if you've got a Labor government and you're a Teal independent and you're sitting there it's implied that basically you keep me in power and I keep Liberals out of this seat. What do you reckon? And then you've got a real quid pro quo. Whereas the Greens, I think that Labor and the Greens should be closer. Albo, who's the Prime Minister and now has the biggest mandate since God knows when, strongly disagrees with me on that one. So unfortunately,
and he's got every good reason to. Look,
we disagree a little bit on that.
I mean, one of the big things about the Greens in the last term, and Max Chandler-Mather's name is all over it. Yeah, was housing policy. I mean, Labor had a mandate to pursue this, but they were held up by the Greens for more than a year, and that included funding for housing for domestic violence victims, for homeless Australians. It was a shocker, mate. And really, it was one of those cases where, and it's a common criticism of the Greens, that they pursue the perfect and it never comes around. Politics is about compromise, and they're just incapable of doing it on occasions.
Yeah.
And in housing, that's one. I think it's one of the big challenges for the Albanese government going forward, and housing is not an easy fix. I mean, you can tinker with the supplies, well, not tinker, but you can substantially change the supply side of housing. That means those people who are already in housing, have bought their own houses, taken out a mortgage and all that, they will actually see the value of their homes decline. Or let's say the growth of value will reduce. Because you're changing the supply side of things. So whichever way you go with housing, you're gonna make some enemies.
I find
it's actually a really hard fix
with that one. I think the thing that really frustrates me, and I do speak from a position of having studied and done a degree in political economy, so I'm not a complete numpty when it comes to this sort of thing. But if you take an existing market like this, which clearly has a barrier of entry, which is way above what is natural. If you were to run a subsidized housing campaign, whether it be rent to own, whether it be means tested buying, whether it be any of those type of welfare-esque plans to get people in houses, you are not touching the sides of a $2 million house market. That market's not being touched. The only side of that that's being touched is the rental investment side. And unless you do something that is basically akin to Shaquille O'Neal jumping out of a fucking genie thing and saying Shazam and creating 1 million houses in about a week, you're not going to touch the sides of that. And I just think the idea of this,
I've looked at
the
modelling for negative gearing, and anyone who thinks it's going to be a quick fix, it actually. It may take things the other way.
Negative gearing is deeply misunderstood. Is deeply misunderstood.
And look, Labor went in 2019. People like Tim Wilson helped knock it off with their reforms on negative gearing for new properties. Right? It probably wouldn't have had much of an impact anyway, but there's always the sort of scare campaigns. All the modelling I've looked at sort of indicates that negative gearing is not, if you took it away overnight, it's not going to change much in terms of the housing environment. The issue is supply, and if you build the supply, bear in mind people who own houses and expect, whether it's in Sydney or in regional Australia or Melbourne and Brisbane, whatever. Once you've taken out a mortgage on a property, let's say that's worth $1 million, you would expect that sort of growth because the growth in the last 10 years has told you that you're virtually going to double the value of that property, that it'll be worth $2 million in 10 years. But if you actually figure out the supply side, that property might only be worth 1.2 after 10 years.
Yeah,
So
and you know what? That's actually not such a bad
and
thing.
those people are going to be pissed off. It is one of those things, housing, that no matter what you do, and you do need to deal with the supply side, you are going to make enemies. You are going to make some people very angry.
Well, like I say, you can restrict markets into segments and you can make a massive impact on the way that whole thing works. Even if you just go like the Scandinavian thing of having privates and publics and change the way the public housing works. I don't think that's the direction for Australia, but I think that making a market segment of a segment of the market that doesn't exist does not interfere with the other market segment, because there's no one on 80K a year who are like, oh, I'm just saving up for my nice new house in Erskineville. That ain't going to happen. But if you've got a situation where you've got means tested housing where that, like I say, like a rent to own thing or something like that, that's not going to cause an issue.
Well, those sorts of projects are actually happening now in New South Wales.
And they are, which is
through
good.
The state government.
But the other thing about the 10 years, $1.2 million, say you buy a property that's
those are rough figures, just bear in mind.
Yeah, we'll use that number. You did not pay rent for 10 years. Now, you've paid your rate, sure. You've probably paid some improvements or maybe some emergency plumbers because your shit has overflowed it's on Saturday morning. But at the end of the day, people love to say, I lost money on the house.
You definitely have more equity in that home.
You did not lose money on that house unless you're spending $50,000 a year on rent. You lose $50,000 a year, come to me and talk about losses.
But the expectation is that you should have made $1 million, but you've only made $200,000.
That expectation needs to die.
It is one of those areas. It's like Barack Obama once said about being in the White House. Everything that comes across your desk, this is housing, right, in Australia. And then it does not have not even an easy solution, doesn't really have a proper solution. The only thing you can do is work on the supply side. The issue around that is that we've got construction that's basically at full tilt anyway.
Well, yes and no. One of my conspiracy theories about the Trump tariffs is that we're going to see all of a sudden Bunnings is going to be awash with cheap new drills and Chinesian screws.
You're going to have people that own them. People who know how to use them. That's what I'm saying.
Piece of piece, we bring a few more Irish people in.
People in the construction, they are basically at full capacity anyway.
Yeah, the unions just need to stop putting their
just
fucking
ask
thumb
anyone
on
who's
labour.
getting their bathroom renovated. They are waiting 6 months. Well, if you live in a shit council like mine, you're waiting, buddy. You're waiting. You might be waiting as long as a year to have your plans approved. Not for a bathroom renovation, but any sort of renovation,
and that's being worked on.
Renovation outside. And then you've got to wait for the tradies to be free. To be free and come work in the house, and that can take a long time too.
Tradies, and that's something that I think that we might see if because the CFMEU and Labor are no longer mates, and I believe the CFMEU were the reason why a lot of the skill migration tests and stuff like that conveniently excluded construction skills. And while I'm not exactly cheerleading for the idea of the demise of the Aussie construction wage, because I'm certainly not fucking arguing for that, what I am saying is if there is a skills shortage in construction, can we stop trying to appease the CFMEU and let's just fucking bring in a bunch of Irish people?
When it comes to housing construction, the CFMEU don't have much of a profile.
Yes, but people do go across trades. And one of the things you're going to find is that when all these massive road construction projects end in New South Wales and Sydney, which won't be too long, we're going to see a lot of people looking for work. And this whole idea of shit, we can't find someone to swing a drill is going to become a lot less of an issue.
Well, part of the issue is reskilling and upskilling people through free TAFE, and that's kind of an important thing. That's something that we should never have fucked around with going back 25, 30 years.
Yeah,
even the business of technical schools, which basically don't exist anymore, that was a bit of a shambles too. We actually sort of unskilled ourselves.
Yeah.
But look, these are really, as I say, these are really complex issues. But governments like this one will be measured by their success in it.
Yeah.
And so you can talk a good game on housing, and certainly the Labor Party has. You could say also that they were obstructed by the Greens unnecessarily, but those excuses don't exist anymore.
I can see you getting us back on track. I'm going to do one more thing on the housing thing, which really fucked me off. Media Watch, Linton Besser, who I really want to like because he did some great work in background briefing, and there's just something about him that I like. God, first he goes after Chaz Chidlam, my favorite podcast, Pep, and then he goes after Labor for misstating the fact that they'd built X amount of houses when what they'd done is they'd reconditioned old houses that were not unlivable. You know what? They made new dwellings, fuckhead. They talked about the fact that they built all these houses. Sure, let's get fucking pedantic about words. At the end of the day, if you're taking existing dwellings and you're making them livable, you're my friend, because that increases supply much quicker than having to draw up some AV Jennings shithole and putting it in the middle of nowhere. So fuck you for fucking making that a bad thing.
This is a really big thing. But look, that aside, Joel, Linton Besser's postulating aside,
it annoyed me.
This is a really tough thing to fix in Australia. It is a running sore now for 30 years. Our houses have become unaffordable now for most working people.
Yes.
Unless they take the big step to either move to regional Australia or move to outer suburban Australia.
And get paid nothing for it.
I mean, but the housing is so important. When I talk about that, when I talk about someone who all of a sudden is living in Caroline Springs, who used to live in, let's say, Northcote, who used to rent in Northcote, now has bought a house out in Caroline Springs, that person cannot be as productive in their work because they've got to be on a fucking train for 2 hours a day.
Yep.
So all of these things do come back to housing, productivity in the economy, all those sorts of things. You've got to fix this, but it's hard to do it without pissing off a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah. We're going to see a lot more people living in RVs
look, they've got political credit up the wazoo now, so maybe time to spend some of it.
Yeah, I think housing and childcare as well are going to be where they're going to spend it. And I, as someone who is childless, who detests the idea of being stuck in a house with children and trying to do something, get childcare. You know what? That's really important. If you made the terrible mistake of having children, I fully support your ability to not be near them for a long time during the day.
Well, I don't want to sound like devil's advocate, but there are some things about Labor's policy that I don't really like around childcare. So if you're earning, let's say, a combined income of around $400,000, I forget what the cutoff point is, but if you're earning, let's say, $325, you're still getting a rebate from the government.
Yeah. See,
it's a modest rebate, but you're still getting it.
I don't have an issue with
that. At the same time, you've got to look at childcare and say, why are they charging? If you extrapolate those daily fees into terms or semesters, you may as well be putting your kids through Scots or
yeah, I know, totally. That's the insane part. I think it's
some of the big private.
I think what we should have is we have a situation where we've got public utility ones, which still have good standards. We don't have kids chewing on power cables. But at the same time, you've got your weird little niche ones where they teach them Shakespeare and play fucking classical music to them during recess. And you can pay your $50,000 a year for that. And that can be there for your people from Toorak.
I understand. First thing I want to say is that look, and there's something that Labor has delivered on. Childcare workers need to be better paid.
Absolutely.
And look, they did get a big spike in their award.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
But then we look at, and we know this through Dutton. Then we look at the owners of these properties, particularly if they own 2, 3, 4, and they're fucking multimillionaires because they're a little bit like McDonald's. Firstly, they've invested in property. Secondly, they've got cash flow coming through the door at private school levels, and I don't know. I mean, maybe we should be looking at more and more public childcare services.
Yeah, no, I absolutely public childcare services.
I think we've gone too far down that road. But anyway, these are some of the big challenges the Labor Party's got, and it does have a lot of cachet, and it does have a lot to spend.
It does.
These are very uncertain times. We'll get to some of the Trump factors in a moment. Very uncertain times in global economy, so no shortages of challenges around for the incumbent government. The question we've got to ask, Joel, is what went wrong for the coalition? And the answer to that, Joel, is everything.
Yes. Yes,
I mean-
everything.
The Trump stuff, I'm not buying a lot of it. I heard Albanese speak, as many of us would have on Saturday night, and I thought he said, I thought what his words was, this is a win for Australian values, and I thought that's about right. I don't think the Trump stuff had a big factor in it. I mean, the coalition were stupid to, make Jacinta Price the Doge minister when they already had a minister for public spending.
Yeah.
By the way, so that poor the David Coleman who lost his seat. He's just got elbowed out of the road.
Oh god.
So
Hey,
the
look,
Trump
save some
factor.
money.
They talked about public service cuts. And then they were never really serious about that. And when you asked them how much money they were, this is David Littleproud, the National Party leader. Oh, it's going to save us $9 billion. And he goes, oh, is that by attrition? Is that by, basically retirement? Yeah, sure. So it was all back of the envelope stuff anyway.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And like how much of that shit, like as everyone said, is going to wind up being done by $1,500 a day consultants for the Big Four? I mean, like, come on.
That's what they
happens.
do. So
That's
they
what
will
happens.
reduce the Commonwealth Public Service numbers and replace it with unaccountable corporates
Outsourced drones.
who are paid millions of dollars in consultancy fees.
Yeah, and they're not like these aren't geniuses and these aren't specialists. They are fucking placeholders who are desperately scrambled together by organizations like, in the public sector who are shitting themselves because they can't get something done. And they get some postgrad kid who's getting charged out by Deloitte at something like $1,500 or $3,000 a day. And this kid is on like $50K if they're lucky, and they're working weekends to make up for it because they're doing the paperwork for what they did during the week. It's not the idea that they're bringing in experts at a high cost. They're bringing in kids who have no idea what the fuck they're doing for insane amounts of money, and the partners are just counting their
The
checks.
Chalmers
It's
budget shows
just
that
insane.
Australia spent, the Commonwealth, I should say, spent
Yes.
$3 billion less in consultancy. So they have,
That's
they
good.
have hired, another 40,000 public servants.
Good.
But there's your trade-off.
There it is.
Not paying the $3 billion in consultancy.
And you get intellectual capital.
And the system's more accountable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you remember
That's-
when we had
yeah.
the census and it all broke down and it was
Mhm.
IBM who'd been given the contract
IBM,
and all that sort of
yeah.
stuff?
Fuck, that was brutal.
And there was just, it was a complete balls up. I mean, this is the most important piece of data that we have running around the country. And who was responsible for it all? Maybe those people and, I don't know, someone.
Yeah, it was pretty
And
embarrassing.
that's the problem with consultancies.
It wasn't great. So yeah, look, like the whole thing was a complete nightmare. I must say, I've got a bit of a conspiracy theory, which is that the fact that Liberals went out and they did it over Kevin Rudd. Kevin Rudd famously said, we're going to, increase the resource, the rent. We're going to put the mineral resources rent tax on there. And the Minerals Council went, yeah, we don't love that idea.
Oh, well, they didn't consult with them. This is part of the disaster of the campaign. And also by they were going to, these are all the big Queensland frackers, right? They were going to bring that gas down to Sydney and Melbourne and Brisbane too, presumably.
Yeah.
And they were going to charge the exporters an export fee, which would bring the price of domestic consumption back to something that was more viable for the gas producers. Now,
Yeah.
it's at face value, it makes a bit of sense, but the Constitution. I mean, look, I guess you have to get the legislation right, but the Constitution says you can't
Block trade
tax
between states.
to the benefit of you can't tax to the benefit of some states, but not others.
Yeah.
So
Well, I
there
think,
was
I think
going
it's
to be an
blocking
issue
trade
with
between
that.
states, but yeah.
All
Anyway.
of that when the coalition dropped this policy, and like many of their policies, it was like the industry just went, sorry, what was that? We haven't heard a thing about this.
Yeah.
So one of
And-
the things you
yeah.
want to do is consult,
It's wise.
and none of that was forthcoming. we'll get to their campaign, what a complete fucking disaster it was in a minute. But I just want to talk about, some of these external headwinds. That's a fucking terrible cliche. Economic headwinds around Trump and tariffs particularly.
Yeah, okay.
And I was telling you earlier, the head, I forget what title he carries, but the head of the Port of Los Angeles, which is the biggest port of entry for all imports to the United States, was reporting that imports through that port are down by 1/3.
That's a lot.
That's a staggering figure. And this is what Trump's babbling about. You can have 2 or maybe 3 or 4 or 5 dolls, but you can't have 20, sort of thing.
That Barron's getting $10 for his birthday as well. Like it's not one rule for you and one rule for me. It's not the same rules. You can't fool me twice.
And of course, we got the first quarter facts and the first quarter economic figures out on the United States, and their economy shrank by 0.3%.
When it was growing before.
And I'm going to go out on a limb and say the next quarter will be worse. That'll put them in recession.
Yeah.
The other thing that I deeply loved was that the Japanese are going to sit down with Trump and his trade czar and some of the other idiots that he's got in his executive. And they've already said in advance, the Japanese, listen, don't disrespect us. Don't do what you did to Zelensky. Don't have that idiot vice president come in and lampoon us and demand it. What? Have you thanked him yet? Have you thanked him yet? All this sort of stuff. Because if you do, just remember that we carry over $1 trillion of US bonds in our treasury, and we can make the US economy shit itself pretty much overnight.
Yeah, absolutely.
In fact, and we know that Japan, China, and South Korea have been meeting to discuss their responses about these tariffs, and those 3 countries, more than any other on earth, own American debt.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so you hope, look, you wouldn't want to see them sink the US bonds market because, probably cause a depression. but
yeah.
But at the same time, don't fucking treat us like mugs. And let's, if you're going to art of the deal and all that sort of stuff, you're going to be serious about this. Don't treat us like mugs and keep that fucking idiot vice president the fuck away out of the room.
It's terrifying. Basically, they are wearing suits, which is good, but apparently the first round of negotiations has failed where the US has said no to an exemption from the reciprocal tariffs that were announced on early April. So that's a bad start. But yeah, if there's any of this sort of fucking rhetoric around Japanese being peasants, or did you even say arigato, or fucking whatever that comes out of their mouths, will be met with unexpected consequences, I think. Or actually expected consequences.
Well, expected. Right, they've actually said,
well, they did walk back on that.
$1 trillion. We just take your bonds market to the shit out.
Yeah.
And the Chinese sitting back there going, you do know that we own even more of your debt than the Japanese.
Yeah. We hate them, but we hate you more.
And so, you hope that wiser heads will prevail, but then you look across the Trump executive and there aren't too many wiser heads.
No, there's really not. Heads. It's not good.
Yeah. So look, these are all big problems, but we've got to get back to what went wrong for the coalition. And you mentioned this, the gas price fixing, which was cobbled together, no consultation, probably unconstitutional, depending on how they frame the legislation.
Yeah, I didn't know those.
A bit of a
details.
Disaster. The big disaster is something that we've discussed, is the work from home stuff. Now, we're told, since it was published in the 9 media papers, that it was not even run past their shadow cabinet. That this was the work from home stuff was conjured up by Jane Hume and Peter Dutton.
Yeah, that's not good.
No consultation. Why you consult, basically, with your colleagues is that they will look at something and go, hang on, you've missed something.
Yeah.
Right?
That's the whole point.
You've missed something here. And the work from home stuff, and I've spoken about this on 2 Jacks quite a lot, the work from home stuff was just such a fucking disaster I mean, they started off by saying, yes, it was going to be all public servants, all Commonwealth public servants. And then, it's just the ones in Canberra. So they, pissed about with that. And then Jane Hume did a media run where she argued not that Canberra public servants were not as productive by working from home, but that all people who work from home
that was good.
were not as productive, and actually cited a study, and that study exists that
Sure.
says that it's reduced by 20%. Now, there are all sorts of studies around work from home. If you wanted to sort of put them all together, the conclusions are that the more, complex the task that's undertaken at home, the more productive working from home will be.
Yeah, okay.
If that makes any sense, I might not
Yeah,
have
it does,
explained that
actually.
terribly
Makes a lot
well.
of sense.
The more banal, it tends to be less productive.
Because you get distracted and you do your laundry or something.
So that's what it was. But put all that aside, because she was saying if you work from home, you are a bludger.
Yes.
And she was messaging, and so was Dutton when he got onto it. They were messaging their mates, tradies, you poor guys, you don't get to work from home. Yeah, but their wives and partners do. And so
their
many
base do as
other
well.
Australians do work
Yeah.
from home.
It's mental. And not only that, but also they started whinging saying, Labor have misrepresented this. We only meant the public service and Labor came out and no, your message was so shit that people thought you meant work from home. And that's a part of why.
That's why. And Hume deserves all of this, because I saw her on Sky News talking about this 20% thing like it was a fact rather than an esoteric study, and talking about it in the general, not just around Canberra public servants. And although, there were references to Canberra public servants, she was talking about, 20% reduction. These are what the studies are showing. She actually said that all studies show that working from home means you are less productive. So she's not just saying we will stop work from home, although some people were getting that message, work from home regardless of where they work public service or in private enterprise. They'll be told that they're fucking bludgers.
Yep.
And Labor didn't even pick up on this for a couple of weeks, but it was when their door knockers were out and about, people were coming out. So people were just saying, I'm very worried about this work from home thing.
Yeah, okay.
And then they realised that they're on a winner. So what were we, a week into the campaign when they dropped that? And they still had some issues, some hangover from it. I mean, it's never a good idea to walk away from a policy that you hand on heart said was just going to be good for the country.
Yeah.
A week before. So that was a disaster. The defence policy was released in the last week of the campaign.
Which is pretty funny.
And it was just, we're going to spend 3% of GDP,
like Trump said,
on the military. Well, what are you going to buy? How many hand grenades are you going to buy? How many tanks? How many long-range or medium-range missiles? What are you going to go? Ooh.
Yeah, but I know the answer to that.
Press release.
I know the heaps.
It's about 600 words. There's no mention of acquisitions. There's no mention of anything. It was literally done on the back of a beer coaster.
And the saddest thing is that so as we explained before, it's not like the polling was showing a wipeout, and it's not like, it was, but the Liberal polling wasn't. It's not like they genuinely thought they weren't going to get in. Like they had, I was listening to a podcast today that's explaining that they had a cabinet meeting where they were discussing their plans for public office, which is a ritual they have, some sort of procedure. And they were ready to take office. This was them game ready. This is them not.
They were
there's
extremely confident late January that they were going to win government.
But they were apparently confident up until last month.
There was a senior member of the coalition, unnamed, who sent a journalist a list of 18 seats that they would take from Labor.
Amazing.
It includes Bennelong, by the way, and it included Parramatta, and we went through those before, which are now basically 60-40 seats. Basically, we'll need 10% swing plus to win them back.
But this is their A game then. This is them thinking that this is what they do to get into government, not, oh my God, we're going to lose. Okay, we just need to put a policy out there to save some furniture, but this is pointless. This is futile.
It wasn't just the messaging was bad.
It's embarrassing.
It was the way it played out too. So we've done work from home. Defence policy released in the last week. What? You do that. and Andrew Hastie was dragged out. Andrew Hastie's known to want to be away from defence. He doesn't want to be in defence. He wants to broaden his political horizons, I suppose.
Yeah, okay. He's a bit typecast.
So he was, but Dutton saw him as a challenger, and sort of kept him under lock and key. They had probably one of their better policy ideas, or at least something they could grab onto, was the fuel excise, which was going to be halved for a year.
No, it was 25 cents, wasn't it?
The fuel excise was going to be halved for a year.
I think it was 25 cents off a litre.
Well, that might have been the calculation, but the fuel excise was going to be halved for 12 months.
Yeah, for 12 months.
And so it took them a week before Peter Dutton turned up at a service station.
The best part is, service stations don't actually need to pass on those savings. That's a whole other story. But B, the fuel prices have gone down like crazy. This is the first time I've seen fuel with $1.50
I'm seeing
in front of it.
$1.62 a litre and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's not a good time to be spruiking fuel discounts when fuel feels like it's 40 cents off.
Something they can hang their hat on. So what do you do when you do something like that? You go out, you get around a service station, you pay for someone's petrol, you put the bloody Bowser in the tank, and off you go. It took them a week to figure out that they've got to go and sell this at a service station. They announced Commonwealth funding for the Melbourne Airport, Melbourne Airport railway link. You know where they announced it? In a fucking winery.
Yeah, okay, that's pretty embarrassing.
It was just unbelievable stuff. They had no tax policy, virtually nothing. They had a policy on vehicle emissions that lasted 48 hours before they were issuing clarifications. The whole thing was a fucking disaster. I mean, I think the political scientists will be studying the Liberal campaign and the coalition campaign for the next 200 years, and they'll still be scratching their fucking heads about it.
Yeah, the Nats are lucky to have got less of a shellacking than
they're going to lose the senator. They haven't lost any.
They didn't lose Cowper to the
but they didn't win
Calais,
and they should have.
Yeah,
and so Andrew G's back as an indie.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
They haven't had a great time of it. They're trying to pretend that they've had a ripper compared to the Libs, and I guess relative to the Libs that they've done a bit better, but they haven't had a great time of it, and they will delude themselves into thinking this. So what happens now with the nuclear policy? They were almost embarrassed to talk about it during the campaign.
Yeah.
So what do they do now? Do they keep this? Because the Nats have already said we're going to keep it. This is part of the big problem that the Tories have got, the Libs have got, is that the fucking National Party cart leads the horse, the Liberal Party horse, particularly around energy and climate. And the whole reason we have a nuclear policy is that the the Libs could sell it to the Nats, and they would then support net zero by 2050. Yeah. That was the only way they would accept it. So now the Nats are still saying, well, we want a nuclear policy in this country. The Libs obviously can't go down this route. About the only sort of compromise you could come up with is to say, look, let's repeal the Howard legislation, which prevents nuclear energy being created in this country. So at least we have the option.
Yeah.
I mean, Labor were able to make it stick, and it was a terrible lie. 600 million for what was it? Six large-scale nuclear reactors. That's a fucking bargain. You have a look at Hinkley Point C station in the UK in Somerset. Announced in
that's
2010.
blown out like crazy.
Soil turned in 2017. Yeah. Supposed to come online in 2024. Now will come online in 2031. The cost of it, if I want to do the pound, is £65 billion. That's 130 billion just there. Times that by 6, you're getting up towards 800 billion. No worries at all. And that's in a country that has nuclear power. You go through the same exercise about the new one in Georgia, in the state of Georgia, in the United States, and just the cost overruns and the delays that occurred there too.
That country has nuclear coming out of its arse.
Yeah, so they don't have all the NIMBYism. They're not going to have all the protests. See, the process would be, firstly, we've got to repeal the legislation
Laws.
so we can
exactly
have this. So we're going to knock that over. We're probably going to need crossbench support to get that done, certainly in the Senate. Then we've got to go to the states, none of whom are willing, including the LNP Premier Crisafulli, who doesn't want nuclear, and say, we need you because we need you to legislate to change because there are a number of states that have banned nuclear. We need you to overturn those things. Then we need to get our sites done. All of this was going to be state funded, like fucking socialism, because they wouldn't get an investor interested in it.
Which I have no issue with. I think we should nationalise utilities on a whole. But, of course,
Why?
this is not the Liberal Party. Well, because they shouldn't be for profit. Power should not be for profit. Power should be run by the government.
If they're just left as fucking smokestack industries, as they were for a long time. By the way, how's Victoria's move to recreating the SEC going again?
I don't actually know, but I wouldn't surprise me for the fucking train
It is nowhere government should be. Government should be maybe assisting with investment, creating the right environment for investment. But if private industry is not interested, you've got a bad idea.
Well, no, but anyway, I won't go into the
just certainly in energy. Yeah, most certainly you do.
No, I totally disagree with that as a fundamental rule.
Well,
the nuclear policy stinks, but something that has a social good, a social output, is in the best interest of government to fund and run well. I don't see an argument against that.
So you're going to spend nearly $1 trillion, right?
This one's dumb.
On 6 large-scale nuclear reactors.
This one's dumb.
All debt financed from the Commonwealth.
Yep, my point remains the same. This policy is dumb.
Then you've got to start thinking, when are these things going to come online? When are they going to start actually attracting some money?
I completely agree with. All of this is the fundamental point I just made.
If you've got capital looking at this, that is private capital looking at this and going, that means you can't make a quid out of it.
Sure, but the fundamental point outside of this stinker of a policy, regardless of which party floated it, is that the government can factor in social costs, social profits, which private sectors can't, unless they're subsidised by government, which is doing the exact same
stuff if you're in government.
Why would a private company say, I'm glad the economy's going well as a result of my power plant? That's not how it works.
Series of rules.
Brother,
you do not want the Commonwealth involved in building power stations, mate.
Yeah, I totally disagree with that.
Well, all right, we'll move on. Anyway, complete fucking disaster. The campaign was an utter fucking shambles. They had really just a couple of spokespeople. Most of them were either in hiding or were suppressed, like Susan Ley. I mean, I wouldn't say she's the greatest retail politician in the country.
She's not inspiring.
She was sidelined. She was sidelined by Dutton. Jane Hume was promoted in front of her.
Two sides of the same coin to me. They're the same person.
Angus Taylor. We just know he's lazy, but whether he's lazy because he doesn't like Peter Dutton or whether he's lazy just because he's lazy, we don't know.
I think he might just be inherently useless, but I just don't think he's smart. Like the main thing he's known for is commenting on his own Facebook post. Otherwise, what's he done? Oh yeah, that's right. Ripped off a whole bunch of water licenses and made a shitload of money from it. That's what he's known for.
I don't know about that. The water licenses, I'm not sure about. There were some issues. He's got large land ownings around Hume and around sort of out of Sydney, but I don't know that he's down anywhere near the.
Are you sure? It's called Australia's Watergate by the University of South Australia.
Okay.
Apparently, $80 million of a water entitlement. Anyone can look it up themselves. We won't go into it now. But yeah, apparently there was a Cayman's financial structure involved. This was a massive scandal.
Oh yeah, I do remember that now. Yeah, it was going back when they were in power when he was in government.
Yeah, it was serious corruption.
Well, we'll let our listeners have a look into that.
Yeah, I'm not going down the rabbit
I
hole.
just wanted to move on now to the demographics and how the demographics are pitched against the Liberals while they remain, this kind of fucking boys' club of navy suits and dour ties. Women have voted, from what we can tell, it's around 58-42 to Labor, two-party preferred.
Yeah.
That's 51% of the electorate voting 58-42. You can't win, and it's actually worse than it was in Morrison. So they Morrison in 2022. So they identified this afterwards and said, well, we don't have enough women representing us, not enough pre-selected, and we don't have enough support from women because our policies are, one, to ignore climate change, to think domestic violence policies are a fucking outrage, all this sorts of stuff. They were particularly focused against women. Costa Maris has got some Costa Maris from the polling company Red. What is it, Joel?
Red Bridge, I believe.
Red Bridge. Thank you. I was going to say Red Hill, but anyway, Cos said voters who spoke a language other than English at home also backed the Labor Party over the coalition in quite a significant way. That's such a big one, he said. So the two-party preferred for Labor amongst Australians who speak another language at home is 60% across all our research.
Yeah, okay.
And, of course, that is a drastic problem for a party that was trying to win seats in two swing states of New South Wales and Victoria. Both states had swings to Labor, about 4% in New South Wales and less than 1% in Victoria. Samara said it was particularly the Indian and Chinese diaspora who supported Labor, and he said this is why they lost Deakin and Menzies in Victoria.
Yeah.
Menzies, there was a very good local member there, Liberal local member. His name was Keith Wallahan, ex-ADF, articulate, intelligent, sensible. And he's unfortunately lost his seat, one of the moderates. Deakin, and we'll get to Michael Sukkar later. Fucking pack your fucking bags, and we'll get to what a piece of shit he is in a moment. But on two-party preferred votes, Gen Z and millennials, which now outnumber baby boomers, so people are 60 or older, as opposed to people between 18 and 45, vaguely. So that 18 to 45 group now outnumbers the 60 pluses. They're voting Labor two-party preferred 60-40.
And Teal. In the other ones.
No,
definitely.
We're talking about two-party preferred, right?
Yeah,
so,
but when there's a Teal candidate, they're voting for Teals. That bracket.
Well, sure, but they're voting 60-40 Labor to coalition two-party preferred, right? Yeah. So it's not just who they put one, it's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. So that's a huge number. I mean, Labor really gained the preferencing system very, very well. The Liberals seem incapable of conquering it.
Well, they were making deals with One Nation, which doesn't really matter because it's how to vote
that
cards.
was so dumb.
But that's such a bad headline. You're never going to get, read the room, guys. One Nation's on the nose.
It doesn't matter about that particular seat because the messaging is to the big cities in the big parts of Australia where they needed to win. Victoria and New South Wales, they were just saying, "Hey, we're back in fun."
Yeah,
that was one of my mates who's likes his politics, but he's doesn't quite understand our electoral system. He said, these fucking arseholes, they're going to preference One Nation and vice versa. And I said, mate, they've pretty much been doing it anyway. Yeah. In the past, and certainly One Nation have been preferencing the Liberals a fair bit. But there was just this big announcement about it, which was kind of even worse,
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't a good look.
So the demographics are against them. And they're a little bit more about this is that they decided once they looked at their losses in these heartland seats in Wentworth, in North Sydney, which has now been scrapped, in Mackellar, They looked at these losses and said, you know what? It's the voters who are wrong.
Yeah.
And we're just going to walk away from these constituents in heartland seats that have represented prime ministers and ministers of the Crown over the journey. And we're going to go and find our own constituents. And this was going to be, I remember, I've probably mentioned this on the podcast a number of times. In 2023, Dutton said that the Liberals were the party of regional Australia.
Yeah.
And you go, well, no, they're fucking not. That's the National Party, kind of, sort of. I also argue Labor is too.
Well, but yes.
But if you think you're going to win votes in Werriwa, if you think you're going to win votes in Hawke is another one out of Western Melbourne.
Yeah.
Not only are you ideologically different to these people, to the aspirations and values of the people in these seats, you've got no connection. You've got no network of people there besides some crazy motherfucker from Advance.
Yeah, or you pay them, which doesn't work out well, or you get the exclusive brethren. Did you see about that?
Yeah, I actually reached out to the guy, and I'm going to chase him up. I know he would have been busy with media, but now that that's all calmed down, I want to talk to him about being in the cult, and so we're trying to tee up an interview with him.
Yeah, that'd be great
for this
that'd
podcast.
Really good. Fuck yeah.
So, they are politically homeless. This is the problem with the Libs. They refused to do a quota like Labor had done many years ago to bring representation, women's representation in the Labor Party up to 50-50. It's actually a little bit more than that now. They refused to do that. That's communism. So they released an aspiration in 2019 of having 50% of women in pre-selections. It was 34% on Saturday.
Yeah.
So it's male, white, middle class. Add mediocrity to that. There's your triple M. Male, middle class, mediocre.
That's brutal. The Austerity Network, or Southern Cross Austerity as they call it now. Please don't sue us.
But then you talk about it can't be just having any woman walk in who's a bit serious, a bit serious about politics, get through the door. Just wanted to add this in. Sarah Henderson, in the 2019 election that Shorten lost, the only seat that Labor won from the Libs was Corangamite down Geelong Way.
Yeah.
Sarah Henderson got rolled, right, as the Liberal member for Corangamite. And then 3 months later she returned to the Parliament to fill a Senate vacancy.
Yeah.
By the retirement of Mitch Fifield. And you've got to say to yourself, in fact, she contested pre-selection within the Victorian Liberal Party with Greg Mirabella, Sophie's husband.
Yeah.
Well, at least Greg might have at least some sort of claim to being at least some new blood.
Yeah, okay.
Why would you allow Sarah Henderson, who is, oh my God, she's just awful. She was on the Sky News stuff. She's the one sort of constantly moaning about curriculum and woke curriculum and wokeism and anti-Semitism in our universities and all this sort of stuff. You just think you are a complete waste of space. You were utterly rejected by the people of Corangamite.
Uh-huh.
The arrogance of you to put your hand up and say, I'd still like to have a political career, and then the stupidity of the Liberal Party to allow you to do that.
Yeah.
It's just staggering to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, I'm going to talk about Christina Kennelly a bit later, but on such a smaller scale, Labor did the same thing and they're still paying for it.
They are, yeah. And both sides have taken their safe seats for granted. Labor, I think, have learned from this. And I think that's one of the things that Labor have looked at the seats that they lost to the Greens, looked at their candidates, threw some money in it. They're just not going to give them up. But, yeah, they used to have my old stomping ground in Northcote, Batman, and I can't remember what they call it now. They changed it because
changed the name, yeah.
Batman was a syphilitic mass murderer. It's getting a bit awkward, so they've changed the name.
Yeah,
I can't remember what they've changed it to. Very safe Labor now. But the Greens won it there for a little while, and they only won it because Labor had treated it like a factional gift. When they had Laurie, was it Laurie Ferguson? I'm just trying to think which Ferguson it was. He was a minister of the Crown, member of the Labor right.
Yeah, okay.
He lived in Sydney, and he was given the seat in Batman, which is
That's not good.
inner northern Melbourne.
Yeah.
And then they did it, I can't think of his name either, too, the bloke who forgot how many houses he owned.
Yeah, okay.
He was the Labor guy there, and he was another factional parachuted guy in there. The current sitting member, terrific. She's a nurse, grew up in the nursing union, member of the Socialist Left, but sensible. And the people of Northcote went, well, we can't believe what we're seeing from the Labor Party. Now it's a safely held seat.
Yeah.
But both parties have done this sort of, we'll give you a nice little safe seat. Keep you quiet.
Yeah. And it's not going to be really well tolerated because that's the kind of thing that ends up being plumb for an independent, whether it be some sort of Climate Toronto backed independent or just some sort of local personality. It's what happened in Pittwater many, many years ago when Alex McTaggart took it off the Libs because they ran Victor Dominello and he basically just came in and just went, hey, I'm the Liberal Party sent me to win here. I'm your new guy. And everyone just went, who the fuck are you blowing? Do you even know what a beach is? And they elected a local. And then, of course, they went back on that and they elected Rob Stokes because he was a good candidate. As much as I hate the fucking Tories, I mean, Rob Stokes was a decent candidate. Although I will argue his beach chops because when I was handing out for Alex McTaggart, Rob Stokes was clearly getting sunburned. I gave him my sunscreen and I reckon I saved his fucking bacon, but he was frying like a side of pork in the sun, whereas he should have known his slip, slop, slap. So I don't know about his beach chops. He might be from Monavale, but
and the seat of just so I'm up to date on this, the seat of Batman is now called Cooper, and the sitting member is Jed Carney.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I was like, Batman's Carney, isn't it? Yeah.
I think Carney's father was a publican in Richmond for a very, very long time.
Yeah, okay.
And these are sort of famous names in inner city Melbourne.
Yeah.
Certainly the Carneys have been publicans around Melbourne, around the inner suburbs of Melbourne for a long time.
And she's a good candidate. Like, yeah, okay, you can say blah, blah union, but she's good. Like, she's smart.
Well, no, as I mentioned, she was a senior figure of the nursing union. And she just comes from a quality family. I know the family quite well.
Yeah.
So, she's Assistant Minister for Health and Aged Care. Don't know if she gets a bump up. I don't know. There are a lot, because of this overwhelming result, there are a lot of members from the Socialist Left that are now in the Parliament, and according to the factional staff, will need that sort of level of representation in the cabinet and in the outer ministry, and that's something that Albo will have to work out. But he has sort of unlimited authority at this stage, so I don't think there won't be too many people arguing with him.
Yeah, it
has now come time to we wish our fond farewells.
Yeah.
Well, firstly to Peter Dutton, who lost his seat. Everyone thought that was really funny.
Yeah.
That he lost his seat. He lost the seat of Dixon that he's held for 20-odd
though.
years, and he didn't just lose it by a little way either.
Oh, my
he
God.
got smashed.
Was it 58?
Yeah, something like that, yeah. I gave up looking after a while once it was confirmed.
Yeah.
He would have preferred to have lost his seat. This is what happened, of course, to John Howard famously as a sitting Prime Minister who lost Bennelong in 2007. You could almost sense the relief, and people may not understand that, but the fact is they don't have to go back to the Parliament, to the new Parliament. And they don't have to go and sit in the party room and have people basically kick the shit out of them.
Yeah.
So they don't have to do any of that. So he's better off having lost his seat.
There's aspects of truth.
I thought his speech on Saturday night was a very dry mouth thing. He did stumble over it a little bit. It'd be a hard speech to give.
You're very fucking hard.
But
especially if you had the delusion of thinking you had a
gracious.
chance.
And again, we live in a country where our elections, I reckon we run elections better than just about any country on earth.
Yeah.
And we
agree.
Gather together. We have a democracy sausage. We stand in line. We chat amiably. We get the job done. People volunteer to hand out how to vote cards. We've got an independent electoral commission who hire their people who do wonderful work. And when the result is known, the vanquished stands up and concedes.
Yeah.
Doesn't happen. Hasn't happened in the United States.
There's gerrymandering over there. The whole thing just seems really stinky. It's so different. And of course, preferential voting is such a massive part of it, and compulsory voting as well.
Compulsory preferential voting.
Things.
Again, yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, so important. And I'm glad to see that this ranked choice voting, just call it preferential voting. Don't make it your own thing, America. Don't be fucking, oh, no, we just made this up just then. Hey, it's called ranked choice. Fuck you. Preferential voting, and you're allowed to have it. You're allowed to borrow it.
They've got the two-party system just locked in. So that's the problem. That's the inescapable problem that they have.
But it's like
pluralism.
Even so,
there's a lot to be said for pluralism, but when you've almost got a system locked in that is not serving the people, then you really need to look at something like reforming your voting system. But God, that is not on the to-do list in the United States for a very, very long time.
There's still Alaska's got ranked choice, and that stopped Sarah Palin from getting in. So, good things are happening slowly.
All right, so we wave goodbye to Peter Dutton, hard man of politics. I'm sure that there are a lot of immigrants, a lot of refugees who'd be rubbing their hands together at his loss.
Totally
My favourite loss was Michael Sukkar, who we mentioned a little bit earlier. Member for Deakin in Victoria's eastern suburbs.
Yeah.
Gone early. A really unpleasant piece of work. I just wanted to tell us a little bit of a story about Michael Sukkar so everyone sort of understands the sort of person he was. And he was largely working for Peter Dutton when he did this. In February of this year, not long before Albo prorogued the Parliament, basically there was a debate going on about the hate crimes bill. The Attorney General, a Jewish man, Mark Dreyfus, got to his feet. He made a speech saying, no government has done more to combat the abhorrent and shocking rise in anti-Semitism than this government. He listed the Nazi salutes ban, criminalising doxing, glorifying terrorist acts, and possession of violent extremist material. All legislation that had been introduced by his government or Labor government
all states
since 2022. And then he focused on his visit to Israel and attending the 80th anniversary of the Auschwitz liberation. He says, I have stood in the shadow of the main gate at the Auschwitz death camp, the site of a music festival that turned into a bloodbath, and a firebombed synagogue in my own home. And at that point, reportedly, at leader Peter Dutton's prompting, and I'm working off a piece from the Australian Jewish News here. Okay. At that point, reportedly at leader Peter Dutton's prompting, manager of opposition business Michael Sukkar rose on a point of order, and the Speaker, Milton Dick, cut off Dreyfus, prompting the Attorney General to tell Sukkar, you are disgusting. That's what Mark Dreyfus said. He said, I do not need the leader of the opposition or any of those opposite to tell me what anti-Semitism is or how seriously I should take it. Sukkar responded, I move that the member no longer be heard. Oh. And what Dreyfus was trying to do, because he went on because they lost the motion. Sukkar's motion was spanked
resoundingly.
What Dreyfus was trying to do was tell what's called his solo story, his story of connection to the Holocaust. And he said, I am the son and the grandson of Holocaust survivors. I went to the commemoration of the liberation of Auschwitz, the place where 1 million Jews were murdered, a place where my great-grandmother was murdered, and I say to members of this House, we have had a wave of anti-Semitism in this country right now. Sukkar sought, when people have their stories, when Jewish people have their stories of Holocaust connection, a familial Holocaust connection to tell, known as the Shoah in Hebrew.
Yeah.
You fucking shut the fuck up and listen.
Shut up. You sit down, you shut up. You can play with your phone if you want, but shut the fuck up.
He did it at Dutton's instigation. I remember the photographs. There was Burke, Butler, and Chris Bowen sitting together, they were genuinely shocked at what happened.
Yeah.
It was really a low act. So there you go. There you go, Michael Suka. Pack your fucking bags. Get the fuck out of the body politic and don't bother us anymore. Other one that I wanted to mention, only perhaps personally, I'd written about Jared Rennick and his nonsense in a Senate estimates hearing where he posed just asking questions about the COVID vaccine causing higher rates of type 2 diabetes, higher rates of dementia, absolute nonsense, which was rejected by experts. And when I wrote about that in the Australian, by the time I looked at X about 3 hours later, and I had about 500 of his fucking poison monkeys on my case. And, I stood my ground. I think you got involved there a little bit there too, Joe.
Yeah.
I stood my ground, showed him all the studies saying there was no connection between dementia and the COVID vaccine of any type. And ditto for diabetes. But they just kept coming at me. So Jared Rennick of the People First Party, who would have spent a fair bit of money of his own money in organising this campaign. And you're about to talk about Cookers in a minute.
Yeah.
Pack your fucking bags and fuck off out of the body politic. You not belong.
Yeah.
The people have wiped the fucking floor with you.
Oh, not even a fucking scary. And not to give away too much from the next segment, but I don't think he's getting federal funding for those votes. And if he did, it wouldn't be much.
Oh, I hope he's gone to his own pocket for this.
Oh no, he would have. He would have for sure.
No, for sure. No.
For sure.
I mean, I'll just say, if the Liberal Party doesn't change its ways, it will disappear. And it has forgotten the first rule of Australian politics, that all elections are won in the centre.
Mm-hmm.
And it has drifted further to the right. And now, Joel, you're going to talk to us about that fractured hard right and how they got on. And they almost did as badly as the Libs.
They did not go well. Now, I haven't gone into the weeds and watched 1,000 videos and checked all the things. I've had a squeeze around, and one of the things that I want to talk about is just that they are going nowhere electorally.
No.
So when it comes to 2022, this is a bit of a reference point, and we had the UAP, which is different to the Trumpet of Patriots, because they're not as tainted by this whole Trump thing. But the numbers aren't that different. One thing that I can say is that for all of John Ruddock's fine work trying to rally up Cookers and basically just pander to the extreme right,
shocker.
No fucking result. So if you look at this, we've got 3.21% to UAP. And let's compare that.
This is first preferences for the New South Wales Senate.
Yes, it is. Yes, I am zeroing in because otherwise it's still good for 3 hours.
No, keep going.
Trumpet of Patriots, 2.38%. So there's a drop in the Clive Palmer vote.
Yes.
But there's tons of reasons for that. There was a lot less money spent on it, I'm sure. Like, it was still a lot of money. But it wasn't quite the same.
Definitely was.
But whatever it is, basically, you're still looking at piss week nothing. Then you've got the Lib Dems, libertarian as such. They got 1.99%, and they still had their controversial name without being able to rely on that, having lent harder into Cookers, but also making an unholy alliance with Hart, formerly known as IMOP, which is the anti-vaxxers with Michael Fuckface, whatever his name is, old mate Michael O'Neill, and Gerard Rennick, the People First Party.
Yep.
And this was the hilarious thing we talked about, where Monica's like, we need to unite. And then the guy from Libertarians is like, oh, Monica, I've sent you a DM, we are uniting. No, but we need to unite. It's like, no, you want them to reunite around you. That's what this is about, because they're united
later on, but yeah, go on.
They got united without you. I'm sorry. 1.99%. It's the same. Now, this is so far, right? So
those three parties between themselves got less than 2% in New South Wales. And the Libertarians, and I don't know whether they were all together in Victoria and others, but they got less than 1.5% across the country outside of New South Wales, just nudged on 2% in New South Wales.
It's fucking embarrassing. So FON, being Pauline Hanson's One Nation, 5.8%. Okay, fair enough. Not enough to get you up, mate.
Not enough to get you up. We'll get Teeny Weeny up in Queensland, and maybe they'll get a senator up in Western Australia.
And look, that's actually up 2 points from the 2022. Pauline Hanson vote. Fair enough. But if you look at, for example, like Family First, 1.67%, are they borrowing votes from Cookers? I don't know. But
Well,
none
they're
of this.
cannibalising each other, aren't they?
But they're cannibalising each other by eating a leg. They're not cannibalising a whole candidate. They're cannibalising a fraction of a candidate. There's no electoral success in what they do, because what they do is cooked bullshit that got validated for 6 to 12 months during a pandemic, and never, ever before, never, ever after, and never, ever again. You do not go to the electorate with batshit crazy ideas and hope that you suddenly get, 15% of the vote?
Yeah.
Mate,
Well, that's
you
what
are
Monmon thinks it's worth.
Well, exactly. And it's embarrassing. But just to give an idea of like how far Rodney Kelton's come, he got a whopping 1.05% in 2022 in Western Australia. And in 2025, he's returned with a whopping 0.97%.
I think it was less than 1,000 votes.
It's not great, right? It's not great. So this is from Batshit Crazy Cookers, and it's pretty funny. So someone posted on some Facebook screen cap, did anyone hear if Gerard Rennick got back in? And Billy Bay responds, it's close but unlikely at this stage.
It's close. Just
Is it? Just 2%, 1.99%.
You basically got about 10% of a quota.
Yeah. Not close.
Not
close,
even
bro.
close.
Not close. But then this guy's great. I'm just going to quote this fucking idiot. This is just a proper cook. I think he had a Great Australian Party picture. Aren't you jumping the gun? It was never about a Freedom Party forming government. That was never going to happen.
No.
Isn't it about Freedom Parties getting candidates into the Senate to hold the balance of power?
Yeah.
Don't we know the result of that yet? Could take 3 to 4 weeks for final count.
It could take years.
It could take years, yeah, and then they'll hold the balance of power, and they'll hold some sway. No, Brad, it's not about forming government. It's not about getting a Senate to either. It's about arguing over scraps and hoping that you get funding. Now, I don't know if you know this off the top of your head. I don't. What is the percentage in the Senate to get paid for your votes? Because I know in the House it's like 4%. Do you know? Do you reckon they'll
That's
get
a good
it?
question. I don't know the answer to that. Is it still the same 4? I
Yeah,
always
look.
assumed that it was.
Let's say I'm going to ask AI how many votes.
Well, yeah, you can, look. I just got one thing to mention, which is a delightful thing, and it's actually up on the shitposting Facebook page. But I saw this on X as well, and there's old Rodney Cullet, and he's on the crutches.
Oh dear!
And,
Did he fall over some crockery?
Yes, he must have tripped over some crockery again.
Mm-hmm.
And whoever the idiot is who's run for the Great Australia Party somewhere or other in Western Australia is with him. And they're saying, please help us collect our corflutes from campaign areas.
Yeah.
Because I guess after a while, maybe local government says, well, you're going to pay for the disposal of these things. We'll do it.
Maybe.
We'll send you a bill.
I'm guessing they want to use them again, but didn't he say he was going to resign as the leader if they didn't have any success this time?
Well,
Which, I mean,
this
I
is
guess
the
that's
second year in a row. I mean, he was kicked out of the parliament as a One Nation member, and then he became an independent because he was under conviction for larceny at the time of the 2016
and the
election.
undischarged bankrupt thing as well. But the larceny thing was
and he's
good.
still an undischarged bankrupt, mate. In fact, I know that there was a report saying the AFP had interviewed him about, because you're signing when you're a candidate registration
stat
form
deck
is essentially a stat deck. So if you're lying on that, saying
that's a
that
naughty.
Under Section 44 that you are completely solvent and don't well, that you're not an undischarged bankrupt, put it that way.
You're not vulnerable to blackmail and you're not vulnerable to corruption because you're not an undischarged bankrupt.
Yeah, so I think that's probably the last we'll hear from him, certainly in an election.
Also, the Senate thing is 4%.
It is
both houses, apparently.
Yeah, that's what I kind of thought. And
I've
maybe I was
double-checked
just
AI to
living
make sure
under
it's
that
not lying.
assumption for as long as that. So
They're not getting their money back.
no deposits back, kiddies.
Yeah, this is very expensive. Ruddock and his mates, Clive won't give a fuck.
And of course, New South Wales, the number one on the Libertarian Senate ticket was Craig Crackers Kelly.
Cracky boy. Yep.
So is it the last we see of him? I mean, he's, I think, had more parties than fucking Paris Hilton. Liberal Party, One Nation, Libertarians. He was sniffing around. Was it not Family First? There was another party anyway. He's been a member of and a representative of.
Yeah, I just love the fact that he's got an ambiguous Twitter handle now, because he had that thing of like, oh, where's he going to go? He's Craig Kelly XXX now. And now he's just left it like he's like, you know what? I could fucking change on a dime. And by the way, I like incest foot porn. Allegedly. Whoops.
Yeah, allegedly, yes.
Fuck, that was great. He left it up for so long. So long. Yeah.
So Brad Corvino's reckoned the Senate will take 3 to 4 weeks to count. But look, the balance of power, don't worry about it. It's all covered. We've got it sorted.
You got it sorted, mate. Don't worry about it. You're all sweet. As long as that your idea of a freedom candidate is the Greens. I hope that's what you meant, Brad.
Yeah, I was looking at the New South Wales figures. There was some talk that Maureen Faruqi was in a little bit of trouble, but it would seem either Labor will get 3 or she will be re-elected. That seems the most likely that Maureen Faruqi will be re-elected to the Australian Senate for the next 6 years.
But yeah, essentially what my messaging here on the stats on that is basically everyone loves to say, oh, have a double disillusion, you get the crazies. And I totally agree with that. That is an excellent way to get all sorts of fucking lunatics into Parliament.
The quota halves.
Halves. So there you go. This isn't even half quota shit. You guys aren't even sniffing half quota.
The Turnbull government sort of dealt with that sort of preference whispering stuff too. So it's a lot harder to get in. But double dissolutions, of course, the quota to get in is
but even if they had that head start, even if they could basically halve,
still won't get anywhere near it.
They're not there. So if anyone is listening and they're worried about the extreme right, and to be honest, I was recently hanging out with a mate who I love very dearly and is a listener. So hey, buddy, and one of his mates who is lovely but was saying, Gerard Rennick's his man, and I was like, oh shit. And he wasn't super cooked or anything. He was just, a bit sort of government skeptical and that sort of stuff. And that's fine. But the fact that he was saying Gerard Rennick, and I tried a few things on him to see how deep he was in it. Not very deep at all. And that to me said Gerard Rennick's People First Party has cut through. Because if this guy was not super
I would have
in
said
the
that the affiliation was soft, Joel.
Well, look, maybe he's further into Cooker space than I realised. I don't know. But what I can say is that my thought that the Gerard Rennick vote was going to be good was very anecdotal, but it was not to fruition. The Gerard Rennick vote went nowhere. And that's including how much time and energy has John Ruddock spent getting the Libertarian Party to be the party of cookers. And he got the whole thing of this unholy trinity of these cookers and getting Crackers to be the number one candidate. I reckon they thought they were in with a shot. And this is not a shot. This is far before a shot. So I don't want to repeat myself too much here because we're flying off the cuff here. But fuck me. They're not growing. They're not getting anywhere. And if this is a rebuke of the Liberal Party going to the right, I don't know what the extreme right needs to take from this. But I think the general message should be stop.
Yeah.
Just stop. You guys are fucking weird. You're in a little weird cult. Go and fucking start, buy a farm in the Northern Rivers and just fucking leave us alone. You'll have more success there than you will here. Just go up there, start a cult, drink some Kool-Aid, don't give a fuck. Because your whole Senate stick is not fucking working. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So, yeah, we're going to move forward. So, Di Lee being re-elected breaks my fucking heart because she is a total asshole. What's his Ben Fordham headline? I did not listen to the clip. About how Albo was buying votes or some shit.
That she's claiming that Labor tried to buy votes.
But obviously there's a lot of details that need to be fleshed out there, and Ben Fordham should not be putting this stuff in the public sphere, but of course he is. It's very fucking irresponsible. But this idiot would not have ever been elected if they didn't parachute Christina Keneally in.
She's a former Liberal councillor, isn't she?
I think maybe so.
Yeah, she's certainly a member of the Liberal Party earlier.
She's a fucking lunatic, and she's just not an interesting or smart or serious person. And who knows why people voted for her. The power of incumbency was pretty strong in this election. But if Chu Lee was in there earlier and they didn't fuck this up with Christina Keneally, we would never have had to have that Australia flag dress wearing fuckwit coming out, because she will be one of the premier cooker voices. No one listens to Babbitt. Rennick's not there. Antic is there for another 6 years, which is fucking great. But Malcolm Roberts, no one listens to him. But even Antic, no one listens to Antic outside of South Australia, I suppose, or outside of Telegram.
No, it's not. I mean, basically, him running the South Australian Liberal Party has meant that they have 2 rural seats and nothing in Adelaide.
I guess we have him to thank for that. That's good. Thanks, buddy.
Sturt went down. Boothby, as we mentioned, kicked Labor's way even further.
And even so, like before the election really turned to shit for them on the night of the infamous podcast thing, which I guess we'll come to in a second, but where Avi Yemeni, Ruxin Finetto, and Joel Jamal had their little telecast on YouTube trying to do like a parallel, freedom fucking ABC coverage, blah, blah. They had Antic on, and they were like, he was saying how they had some great candidates who had a good chance. And Avi Yemeni was pushing like, oh, can we trust them? Are they one of us, And he's like really weasel wording it out. And it's like, you don't need to weasel word here. You're in a safe space. You can admit that your candidate's a fuckwit, because in here, that's an asset. But out there, it's not. So out there, they won't get elected. But in here, you should feel safe to talk about what complete piece of shit these people you've ran are. But, that's his problem, not mine. But yeah, so look, quickly glancing on Mark McFarlane, otherwise known as Mark Mack, who is the elder abuser. Not my words, that's the court. And basically went to live with his grandmother for several years, mooched off her, did not contribute rent. Occasionally it contributed for food, but also withheld food from his elderly grandmother. His elderly mother, withheld medication.
That was the finding of the court. In fact,
it was.
The finding of the court didn't talk so much about withholding foods, but basically got into the withholding meds and withholding medical vets. Not so much the food stuff.
I believe that's in the judgment. Anyway, I've read it recently.
We won't. Yeah, we'll just keep it. But yes, we're very lucky because, of course, Tinfoil Tales did all the work to expose Mark McFarlane.
We wouldn't know that if it wasn't.
And then we found out that he was running as an independent, and I gave him a mention in a column that I wrote for the Australian. And the next thing I know, about 2 or 3 days later, the Herald Sun ran it.
Yep.
And then local media in Wangaratta and around there ran it, and the Liberals changed their preferences because as it stood, they were preferencing Mark McFarlane ahead of the independent incumbent.
Which is insane.
Haynes. And I thought, yeah, well done, one and all. Tinfoil Tales people initially, and then everyone else got on board really quickly too.
And, of course, the Freedom Movement have not disowned him in any way, shape or form outside of Beck Freedom, as far as I know, is the only real outlier. They're totally fine with this. And he just says, oh, I was taking care of her. I'm being stitched up. I'm a target individual. And they all just go, oh, yeah, you're so manly and so masculine. They're trying to target you because they want to destroy masculinity or some shit. That prick Wade had him on his show. Just disgusting. So, when it comes down to it, the lack of integrity in the Freedom Movement is maintained, but the idea that they stand next to elder abuse and they will do all the gaslighting of themselves and others, to be honest, because they do it to themselves, in order to look past that so they can maintain this bullshit little cult is just insane. Elder abuse, guys, you got to draw a line somewhere.
Well, he didn't get his deposit back, Joe.
No, he didn't. He got, 1.9, 1,268 votes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like under 2%, just around 1%, I think, maybe. So fuck him. So yeah, look, when it comes to the telecast with Avi Yemeni, Ruxin Finetto, and Joel Jamal, it was very funny. We had Monica on there saying she wanted to join the Little Party. You saw some of that, didn't you?
I did, yeah. She said that. Well, that was the push that that these libertarian hearts, Rennick sort of fringe parties, crumpet of apricots, all them, they just weren't worth their trouble anymore. And the best way now to make change was to jump into the big parties. In other words, jump into the Liberal Party. I mean, look, I might actually raise the IQ of the Victorian Liberal Party.
Yeah, fuck
but
that.
not my batch.
No.
But yeah, can you imagine Mon sitting around at a branch meeting and talking about her views on abortion?
Yeah.
And everyone's going, look, we've got more redeeming. We really don't need another person.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
otherwise we're going to look like fucking knuckle dragging clowns again.
She didn't bring cucumber sandwiches. She hasn't done anything useful. Why is she here?
She really doesn't understand politics very well. I mean, why was she urging, if we've got to all get together, and then when they do get together and still lose, she goes,
what
are
are
we
we
going to find? Let's go to plan B.
And also, when they did get together, crickets from her. She just was like, oh, well, this isn't about me. I'm not interested.
Yeah, exactly right.
Maybe that's the problem, Monica. Maybe
that's
the problem.
She actually had the temerity in earlier lives that I saw that to basically say that, and I think that was part of her gripe on the Saturday night show with that eminent group of intellectuals that reignite democracy was being exploited by these minor parties.
Oh, well, that's all very fucking dramatic. Anyway, so basically, to get an idea of how this telecast went and what the point of it was, I looked at Avi Yemeni's Telegram for reasons that plague me to this day, and he had a video cut of him and Drew Pavlou, who was a guest on the thing for reasons that will plague him to this day, and it is Avi Yemeni destroys leftist who tries but fails to justify a Labour vote. I can't even begin. And I looked at a little bit of the clip. I didn't look at all of it because it's just tiring. But basically, Drew said that he voted Labour first, voted Greens last. Fine. Avi was pressing him about it, and he just gave these weasel answers about immigration and shit. And that's content. You get someone who is not a leftist, you have them come on your weird thing, you do a supercut of a video, which is the video he posted to Telegram is actually further edited to remove some of what Drew said. And the thing that's really funny is the stuff that Drew said didn't help Drew at all. It made him just look just as shit. It's just the attention span is zero. So just Avi just wanted to be all about him owning the leftists as opposed to Drew, talking. And it was just embarrassing. And it was just so pointless. But that's where these people are at. You don't win elections owning leftists on 45-second fucking YouTube clips that you put on your Telegram posts, editing it down to a point of not just complete obscurity, and then being like, oh, see, look, they're idiots. Your base is small, and that's because they're idiots.
Yeah.
Tofu was on there for reasons I don't really understand, but whatever. Cool. He had his whole setup. That was good. Morgan C. Jonas was on there, which was great. And I want to highlight he spent some money on stuff, and he mentioned this in the thing that he spent some money on some materials and he hoped it has some influence in the election, which is very funny because he was in early, and I'll get to why that's funny soon. In the Hunter, he had a poster, AI graphics entirely. Burgers, Bowen, and Blunders. The Dan Burglar put Labour last. And it has this poster of what it thinks Dan looks like, munching a burger in the middle with Chris Bowen on the side of him. I saw
the posters. They were unbelievably
but it's not really
bad.
Chris Bowen. It's half Chris Bowen. And then there's a weird guy on the side who I think is meant to be Albo, but looks a mix between Albo and a young Noam Chomsky or some shit.
If I might just interrupt. Well, when we're talking about social media advertising for the Liberal Party, they had a photo, blue background, of Peter Dutton. And the one below it was red background, a Muppet that looked vaguely like Anthony Albanese. This is a major party, by the way. Yeah. And basically, who are you going to vote for? And it was it's just these old guys sitting around and goes, what are the kids like? What are the kids like? What are the kids like? Kids like Muppets? Yeah, let's do some Muppet stuff.
Yeah, yeah. And
Frank Oz would like a word, by the way.
The thing that was tricky with that is I can't necessarily get up them for that when Labour's social media had so many cringe Gen Z nods. But the thing about the Hamburglar thing, or the Dan Burglar, very clever, all pure AI. But also they had the Double Trouble one, which was on trucks and A-frames, which was Double Trouble. And I think it was Albo, and I think just said to Alan, and it said more debt, more crime. And everyone just thought it was really funny and wanted to pose with it because it just was a funny piece of contemporary art. It was just so dumb that you can't take it seriously. And you don't want your campaign, material to be contemporary art that people laugh at. That's not the goal, guys. That's not the goal. So, yeah, like a lot of these campaign issues were laughably shit. And, yeah, I can't see it. Like, also, one of the things I really liked about Morgan's presence on this live stream is that about 2 hours into the stream, I'm not sure when the stream started, so it's like, you know, it's a certain amount of time in, he was claiming that Dutton was going to get a surprise victory. And that, like, any time on the day, it's insane. Anytime in the last week, it would be insane to say that. That night, frighteningly insane to say that.
I'll tell you what, I mean, I've watched a few elections, probably a few more than Morgan. I had them cooked at 7:30.
It's bizarre that he even thought there
And I
was
can
a chance.
show you the text to prove it.
But also, like, he thought that Dutton was going to form minority government, which means that he was going to be coming to agreement with the crossbench.
He and the Catter Australia Party would
That's
govern
the only
Australia.
people that would talk to him. Who else would take his phone call? Really? I mean, they would take his phone call, but they wouldn't take seriously. So that was just an embarrassing thing. He just doesn't, like, once again, they don't know what they're talking about.
They just don't understand politics at all.
No, they don't at all, in any way, shape, or form. And once again, maybe this is sexually transmitted disease, but Morgan claimed, based on dubious numbers that he pulled out of his ass, that the Cooker vote sits around 16% in the Victorian
16?
Senate.
Ooh.
Yeah, cool. So at best,
that's
if you
going to
include,
get you.
like,
That's going to get you one senator.
yeah, it will get you Babbitt, which, to be fair, is that is fair. But, like, if you include, like, Fon, which is 10%, and then, if you include Fon across this whole thing, it's 10%. If you take out Fon, it's more like 5.5% because they're only 4.5%. This is including Family First, which you can argue aren't cookers. So it's 10%
calculation
max.
For you right now. So Pauline Hanson's One Nation, 0.3 of a the Trumpeter Pasture 0.17 of a.
This is quotas, though, so it's tricky.
This is quotas.
People don't really
and then
know
the
how
next
many
one
votes are in a
down
quota.
is, well, I guess, Family First 0.12.
Yeah.
Jared Rennick 0.08.
All of this adds up to about 10% of the vote.
It's you're right. It's not numbers. I'd like to get the numbers, but anyway,
They're on there. But look,
they
trust
are
me on
there.
this, it's about
I'll do a
10%.
quick calculation while you keep going.
But yeah, so basically that's that. If you take out Family First, you take out Pauline Hanson, you got even less. I mean, like, it's not even close to a quota. Maybe if it was a double disillusion, and maybe if all of them ran one fucking candidate and had the biggest campaign over a fucking year, they might get up. Maybe. And that's never going to happen because they all want to be the belle of the ball. Monica will disengage immediately once she knows she's not the fucking candidate. I mean, like, come on.
So 6. But keep going.
So basically, Monica was on a live stream at some point. She came up with the whole "we need to be reunited" thing. We've talked about this because, she thinks that they've got a chance as long as they rally together. They rallied together and got 2%. So that's fun. But of course, the great thing is that we were talking earlier about the fact that Alex Antic has taken over the South Australian Liberal Party, and that's resulted in Adelaide having 0 representation for the Liberal Party. Imagine if Monica got in charge. I mean, to be fair, Victoria's already been quite wiped out, but just the monumental impact of having such a just dominant human being who has no idea what they're doing, destroying the Victorian Federal Liberal Party in probably Queensland, I guess.
She'd lose the heartland. Put it in his death throes.
Because, like, she would just destroy shit. She doesn't read the room at all. She only reads the room when there's idiots in it. She just get
God only knows. Maybe they're not that. By the way, the answer to that, including Fon, is 10% in Victoria, just below about 9.6.
Yeah, I rounded up. Yeah. So, in unfortunate news for a few cookers who are having a bit of a hand on heart moment, in Monash, which is in Victoria, for those who aren't familiar with the state, incumbent Liberal turned independent Russell Broadbent did not manage to retain.
I always
his
had him at
position
about
as
10%.
He got 10% as an independent.
I always had him at about 10%.
He lost pre-selection to a woman, Mary Aldred. She's not a cooker, and he's pretty convinced he lost his pre-selection because of the cooker, and I have no reason to disagree with that. She got a 2.2% swing toward her, And, basically he just spent too much time on the internet and fucked his career. Craig Kelly did the same thing. He could probably still be the member for Hughes right now.
I think you've probably been a little bit hard on Russell, but
You reckon?
Yeah, I mean, look, he's just it's like a punch-drunk fighter. He didn't know when to give it up, and they needed, they need some fresh blood. This is a bloke who's never been on the front bench. He'd been a member for Monash. Crikey, I'm going to say he was the father of the house.
It was 25 years.
Yeah, so he'd been there a long time and really not done very much, and so one of the things we just talked about, Liberal Party, is that they've got to refresh, got to renew, got to put some new faces there, got to put some women there, and that's what they did. So he ran as an independent against them. I think Labor, they were sort of trying to tease a little bit there. I noticed that, my good friend, I think he's the father of the house, this is Albo, saying, poor Russell Broadbent been terribly treated by the He was giving him a little free ad during the campaign.
Yeah, well, look, if it wouldn't have exactly been a bad thing for Labor if he'd won. But let's face it, he went cooker, and that cost him his career. It just did.
Oh, he's too old. Give it away. No one to go.
Yeah, I agree with that. But he's chosen his path. I mean, look, he's even done a fucking election insights thing with Topher Field and the Children's Health Defence Australia chapter.
But see, he's reaching out for whatever. I mean, this is a drowning man,
Well, I'd rather drown than take a life raft.
But look, I agree with you. I'm just trying to explain it. This is like he's got a way of he's got to find a way of communicating with his constituency, and he got 10% of the vote, and that was pretty much what he was always going to get.
Yeah, it's difficult.
And Mary Aldred is the new member for Monash, which I think we're not counting the two Teals seats, which are probably now blue in Melbourne, and Monash, which is on the outer southeastern part of Melbourne. That would be their only seat in Greater Melbourne.
Yeah.
Pretty sad.
Well, one thing I can say also about the Russell Broadbent thing, just to close it off, is that he actually posted a picture commending pharmacists and saying hashtag Thank You Pharmacist Day in March this year, so quite fresh. And there are 246 comments and 4 shares, and there's not many positive ones. So, look, he pandered to cookers, but I think he's fucked around and found out, and he's probably going to have a great retirement.
We've been around for a while. She's got the old federal parliamentarian super. So, you beauty.
Yeah, before Mark Latham came and fucking knocked it all down. I bet he wished he'd do that.
All right. Well, you have been listening to the Conditional Release program with your host, Jack the Insider and Joel Hill. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. And if you've enjoyed our bullshit, throw us a 5-star review on your podcast app.
Do it. And basically, look, we can be found on Twitter, Jack the Insider, Crunchy Mose with a K. I don't know. We're not there.
Yeah, you can do it that way. You can hit us up by email on the Conditional Release program. It's got a the in front of it, the Conditional Release program at gmail.com. We would love to hear from you, even if just to ask us if we would like to join the Liberal Party. Renewal, new faces.
There's a lot of openings.
I can cross-dress if it helps.
Yes, that is the quota system. I think that's an excellent note to leave on. Thanks, listeners.
See ya.
I don't think I ever want to talk to any of those people.
Fuck me, you guys are bastards!